All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for your time and for joining. I'm obviously Bruce Macgregor. I'm a labour attorney. Been doing this job for many years, and the way I work is advising companies across South Africa into Africa. I'm also an admitted English solicitor and have obviously knowledge of employment law outside of South Africa because quite a few countries have laws which apply outside and on the contracts into South Africa and Africa, and they're applicable. So as a result, when I talk to you today, I'm going to be giving you a perspective of very practical issues that I've seen over years and which will be of great assistance with your business, especially with employee productivity and the like, and especially at this stage in our history where we're battling with our economies as a result of what's been going on with Eskom, and where we find ourselves in at this particular time. So the topic that I've chosen is why do companies have so many hearings and dismissals for misconduct, but so little and few for poor work performance? Now, this is a topic that I've chosen and something that comes about very often in the context of me receiving calls from employees, from employers, from managers, company owners, to say to me, well, we've got Mr. X or Ms. X who is not who's not performing. We don't want to go through performance process. We just want to fire them. And invariably, they're looking to go a negligence route and end up having a dismissal for negligence and run into problems at the CCMA because of the fact that there is no actual negligence; it's poor performance. And if I look at statistics, so if I look at some of the CCMA statistics, the biggest number of dismissals obviously are for misconduct. And if I look at companies, there's a company that I do work for. They've got a very big workforce of some 30,000 employees, and they run at literally for every one misconduct dismissal. So every 1,000 misconduct dismissals, they'll literally have one for poor performance. And when you stand and look at it from the outside, you would think, well, then there's no problem with performance. Everyone performs, and there's no issue there. But there's a few things a few tests that you do to have a look and see, well, what's really going on, and then you start to see, well, there's something that's not quite right here. I'm ready to go to our next slide, please. Thank you. So what happens then is I've then sat down and had a look to see right what is poor performance and where does it come from. So the start for me then is looking at what is actually happening in a business. So in a business, if you to now look at the definition of what management's doing in a business. So you're saying, well, management's the entity or the process of organizing and directing everything in the business to make it work. So if it's operations, if it's employees, if it's how work flows, and that is management. And what management is looking to do is to get things done primarily using employees. So the first question that I ask when looking at performance is, what is actually going on? Who's responsible for performance? And there's two people responsible at the end of the day. The person who's actually performing is the employee. But before you get there, you've got the company and management, which has a responsibility for performance in the sense that you need to make sure you recruit the right person. You need to make sure that we train, and then most importantly that we manage the staff such that they are running at the maximum of their capacity. And that for me is the start, because when I get to these dismissals that go wrong for negligence and where they shortcut poor performance dismissals, the question I always look at is, well, did we have the right person, firstly? Secondly, did we then, so that's a question of recruitment. Secondly, have we got the right person and the right job? How did the team perform? What was the manager like? And we slowly start to unpick it from there. And it's in that context that I start to see some issues arising. If we could flick to the next slide, that would be great, please. All right. So the next issue, so then when I stand back and I have a look, right? So that's we've had a look at what management does and what it's supposed to do. So you then quickly, before you start assessing employees, I do assessment of management. Now, is management performing? Are the teams performing? And if the teams aren't performing, the first thing we look to do is, well, what are the supervisors doing and what are the managers doing? Years ago, I remember someone saying to me, gee, in a factory, you can measure where you've got 20, let's say, machine operators, each operating a machine. We can work out exactly what output the machine has, what that output is worth to the business, what the costs are, the input costs, and we can pretty much work out the value to the business of that particular employee. When you then start looking at what the value of supervisors and then what are the value of managers, and then you go further up, it becomes a little bit more difficult to assess. But where I have looked at this closely, you begin to see, okay, managers, if managers are working, then all of that output of operators should be optimized. And that's simple. But not all of our businesses are producing widgets or an output from a machine, and it gets a little bit complex. So what we then need to do is then have a look, and if we could go to the next slide, please, is then have a look at when things go wrong, what is happening. So we all know what performance is. Is you employed to do a certain job? In very simplistic terms, are you doing that job very well? Are you doing it well? Are you doing it satisfactorily? Are you doing it poorly? Now, in able to perform, you need to have certain tools. You need to be trained. You need to understand your job. You need to be able to have time to get on top of your job. And then once all of those are in place, if you're unsure, you need to be mentored, advised, assisted, and that's also one of the functions of supervisors and managers and other support. So that's what should be going on. And when things go wrong, the question is why. And this is, if you want to take a bit of a toolkit away, we have a look at what goes wrong. If it's something that is just a blunder, just an incredible mistake, then that issue is relatively easy to put your finger on, and it's often an issue of negligence. So you know your job, and the mistake happened is because you just dropped the ball, you weren't focusing, you weren't concentrating, and then the greater the deviation from what you should have done is the grosser the negligence. So that's misconduct. That's easy to understand. Occasionally, somebody will do something on purpose, and that's even easier because then a willful, intentional misconduct needs to be dealt with. And once again, that's misconduct. It's not poor performance. On poor performance, you're falling down, and when you look at what's going on, it's not because you were negligent, and it's not because you were willful. It's because something you didn't understand in your job profile. You weren't properly trained. You weren't properly motivated. You weren't engaged. There are a number of issues which we need to get to the bottom of. And this is the point where employees become quite frustrated because they're saying, oh, well, we're tired of this person. We just want to exit them from the business. And We don't want to spend time now reinventing the wheel. And I understand the frustration, but in essence, what has gone wrong here is not all of a sudden the employee has just woken up and is not performing. A system has broken down in the background. And this is where we need to be proactive in making sure, and I'll just reiterate again, that your recruitment is recruiting the right people. I can't tell you how many times where we've got an issue of poor performance, and I just go back and I'll see, well, where did we recruit the person from? And then we find, and we just then get a check done of the reference check. And often the reference check's not done, or if we dig a little bit and we ask the right questions, we actually realize that this employee was not and should not have been employed. So that's that system broken down. Other system which breaks down is in your induction or training. It's rushed, or it's not done, or it's not even present. That's another system breakdown. But the largest system breakdown that I see is your supervisory and management levels, where things are not in place because supervisors and managers aren't doing what they should be doing, which is obviously managing staff. And for me, this is the biggest focus of when things go wrong. Now, just as a quick background to that, how do we choose managers? Same question. Did we recruit? Did we train? Did it come through the ranks? And some of the obvious problems that I see from time to time is where we take the most talented subject specialist and we make them a manager. So if you have, you've got 10 IT people in a business, and you take the best IT person in that particular team and you make them the manager. And that's traditionally what's been done. So the longest serving employee becomes a manager or supervisor, or someone who's just really good at their job. Now, that's the wrong way to do it, because there's often very little correlation between your management potential and your ability to do your subject specialty. And as a result, you have a situation where you're not looking and you aren't seeking the person who's got that ability, the ability to lead, the ability to teach, the ability to supervise, whatever it is, but to be a good manager or supervisor. So that's another area where things fall down. And we really need to look to recruit or appoint or promote, looking at that potential. And there are many tools out there, and there are many good HR experts who can assist and advise as to how to do that. So that is another point that's fallen down. And one of the things that I've seen, and those who know me will know that from time to time I've raised this, but it's to move from an IQ-based system in selecting managers to one where EQ is strongly recognized, and that would be in the aspect or area of understanding that someone with high EQ has the ability to empathize, sympathize, and be a very good communicator. And I'll talk to why I say this shortly. All right, so we then have a situation in which we know broadly where things are going wrong in the business, and that can come up with a number of tests that you can just think through your particular business. So have a look at your retention rate. Are your employees happy? Are they leaving in big numbers? Are they fleeing the business? Why are they leaving? What's going on? That's often a sign that there's something wrong within the business, which is linked to ultimately when things go wrong and where management, supervision, even direction from boards or owners is incorrect. Are customers happy? Are projects outlined and finished correctly in time? Are you getting negative or positive feedback? If you've got reviews online, are they poor? And these are all signs that there's something that's gone wrong. Are new ideas pursued and accepted, or are they just dismissed out of hand? Does the business look like it did 5, 10, 15 years ago? Things change so rapidly, and these are all just telltale signs of where things have gone wrong. Looking just at your managers, and this isn't a dig at managers, but it's just poor performance as linked directly to the ability of supervisors and managers to manage. But in regards to managers, how are the teams? Do they feel engaged? Do they feel part of the business, or do they feel that they're not part of the business? They're looking for jobs. They're looking to leave. Because engaged employees are proven to be productive employees. What is going on at that level? So all the time we're just getting samples. We're just trying to understand what is going on in the business, and if indeed the business is well, then all the answers to what these problems that I've been raising should be in the positive, and not in the negative. All right, so if we could move to our next slide, please. So just as a quick recap, what we've done is we've had a look. We've had a look at the difference between poor performance and misconduct. We've had a look at what performance is. We've had a look at what it should be, where things go wrong, and where to look in the business, and what signs that the business is unwell. So if we could just please just move on to the next slide. So then the next question is, all right, if we look back at the business now, in light of this, and have a look at all right, we've had employees who've left over time and who've been dismissed. Were they all true misconduct dismissals, or were they performance dismissals in disguise? So could we have done those better? Other aspects to perhaps have a look at is those employees who've left over time. Where have they gone? Have they gone on to similar businesses, and how have they done? I know this is quite difficult to do, but sometimes I get feedback from my clients as to, what happened to so-and-so? What happens to those persons who resign? And the feedback that I get is, oh, they joined a competitor, or they went somewhere else, and they're doing very well. And certainly the question is, goodness, what happened from our side? Why did they leave? Did we do something wrong? Are we paying money to supervisors and managers, big money, but we're not getting the results and we're losing staff? So these are all questions that need to be asked. So when we get to a position now where broadly we understand a snapshot of the business. So all the time, and that's why I get back to this communication, employees with high EQ, is all the time the questions are, how's the business doing? Are there problems? Let's look at our reviews. And managers and supervisors who've got good communication skills, high EQ abilities, are talking to staff and are finding out from staff not only what is going within the teams and whether they're happy, but also feedback all the time from customers and staff as to how do we improve. So I like to think of it that you've got your business and you've got a river of information running next to the business, and all the time you're scooping information out of that river to come into the business so that you can actually understand from a performance point of view, how are we doing? Because at the end of the day, if you think about very, very simple issues, is what brings a customer back? What brings a client back? What keeps a customer? I've noticed as a lawyer, to get a client is extremely difficult. And then when you have that customer, it's also very easy to lose that client or customer if you don't perform. But if the issues often are the big issues you deal with up front, what it costs, what you're going to do. But the issues really are you communicating? Are you accessible? Are you solving problems? And all of that we only get from communication. And if I think through my clients, so whether it's in retail or in manufacturing, all the time, are you talking to your customers? Are understanding not only the experience, are they happy when they come into a store, but are you meeting their needs? Are the products there that they need? Are you finding out on the ground? And sometimes the best source of information are your employees who listen, who hear, and are able to now give feedback. So you've got this huge resource that we often sit and don't properly look at. All right, so putting that all aside, so that's the background. Let's look at poor performance itself. So the law is simply, if someone's not performing, the question is, do they understand the level at which they're to perform at? And if they do, are they performing at that level? And if they aren't, why is that? And if that answer is because they need training, mentoring, tutoring, whatever, then we need to put that in place firstly. And secondly, give them time to reach that level. And if they're still not after a reasonable time, then you're heading for a hearing, and you're heading for obviously for a dismissal. Now that process, depending on the complexity of the job, can be anything of a month for a job that is quite straightforward, through to 2 or 3 months for a job that has its own complexities. Bear in mind, the very senior person, a manager or a senior, a middle manager and above, does not need to have this level of application, because of the fact that they are employed and expected to perform at that particular level, and there's no need for you to reinvent the wheel for them. So that's the one exception. Now, you in that process is when things have started to go wrong. And if you fix the bigger issues, then you should be able to iron out a lot of these. But saying that, things still go wrong from time to time, and you still got to go through this poor performance process. Now, one of the areas that are lacking, and if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, please. One of the areas that I often see is lacking in picking up what has gone wrong is the fact that there's disconnect between the managers, supervisors, and staff from an assessment point of view. And the reason that I say so is if I listen to most of my clients, they would have quarterly assessments. In some occasions, they're twice a year assessments. And in some instances, once a year assessment, where they would put together really a form which is filled out, and they will then sit with the employee, and they would go through that form and assess the person's performance, which often is linked to bonuses or remuneration, etc. And not and as opposed to now managing that performance. And that for me is an area where business falls down, and where I find, if all those macro problems are sorted out, is a relatively quick win. The reason I say so is that if I have a look at businesses that I deal with across the board, so whether it's IT, whether it's retail, whether it's manufacturing, um, engineering, is if I have a look at the assessment processes, the what is going on is the assessments are of little value because they're too few and far between, and they in the abstract they're asking issues where you're trying to think back over the last 4 months, 3 months, 6 months as to the person's performance. And what that tells me, and what I see when things go wrong, is that supervisors, managers are too busy with other aspects. So whether it's technical aspects or capturing information for technical operational reasons, and not managing and supervising their staff. And the reason I say so is that every time we have a dismissal or the need to go this route, I just find that it's as if the supervisor employer very occasionally has an interaction, and it's a negative interaction with an employee. There's obviously focus on that, but it's just too far between. So if for example, if I met a relative of mine 3 times a year, and on the one occasion that relative was grumpy because they weren't feeling well, then at the end of the year I would think, sure, 30% of the time that relative of mine's grumpy. So, and the other 2 times they were fine. So, yeah, if you ask me what my uncle's like, I'm going to say to him, no, he's relatively grumpy, or moody. Now, that would be unfair. The difference is if I saw my uncle every day or every week, I would know that he would be happy most days, and that he had a bad day, and that's the assessment. And for me, that's the nub of what we're talking about here as the solution. Sorry, if we can, from HR Talk side, if you could go to the next slide, please. So what happens is that thank you. In answering the question, are we managing staff? And this is the nub of it. So how often are you in communication with your staff? If it's a 10-minute in a generic environment, what they call a green area meeting, then once a day, for the purpose of just conveying information, then that's clearly not enough. If it's once a week, once a month, then that's not enough. And I'm not talking micromanaging here. What I'm talking about is, are we in a substantive manner aware of what is going on with our staff members? So we're setting certain goals and targets, and not only are those met, but are we able to stay in touch with the employees as they move towards those? And unfortunately, this is something that takes time, and it takes organization. And in a world where we're flooded with information, where we are hit with, I can tell you, I have contracts coming in at WhatsApp, where someone's saying, "Oh, can you look at this?" Contracts coming in via email, phone calls. Some of our clients asking us to open portals to look at information. I just know as a lawyer, there's just a wall of information, and that's just official. So over and above that, if I want to stay in touch with the news, with professional updates, social media, it can suck up my time, and you've got to be very careful with allocating the time. So in answering the question of are we managing our staff, it really is, are we managing ourselves? Are we using our times productively? Are we overwhelmed with information? Are we able to communicate effectively with the right people at the right time in a situation where we want our supervisors and managers to be able to manage our staff? And to manage our staff, we need to be able to measure them. And certainly a quarterly assessment tool is not good enough. So what is the solution then? So we have seen successful teams, and we have seen challenges in court that have been successful. It's teams that are small enough such that the senior manager has a team of managers who in team has supervisors who in turn has a team that at all stages, the manager has a fair idea as to who is doing what and how they are doing it. And then that is just the trick there that I've seen with good managers, that is the ability to communicate, the ability to, and because if you communicate, you can flick through, see staff, see how things are going, see who's not performing, who is performing. And in the beginning, it is a lot of work, but as time goes on and you've spent time with your teams and you understand the personalities, you understand the work ethic, you understand what they can and can't do and where they are, then it becomes easier and easier and easier as a result. So if I think of some of the most successful teams that I see amongst clients, I can think of a specific team. It has about 12 members in it, and the manager of that particular team is busy with her day-to-day work, her substantive work, what she has to do as an expert in her particular field. But at the same time, she's got constant feedback from her team, and there's partly hybrid work, but where they are just she has her finger on the pulse in what I call the small, medium, and large areas. So on the large projects, who's doing what? On the smaller and medium projects, how are things going? And then on the day-to-day, what I call the small projects, and those are only raised with her where they're problems. But in essence, how that's done with her, for example, and this is just a particularly good example, is that there is everyone is spoken to at least once a day on some level, and that small trick, so that's 12 conversations in a day, which doesn't take a long time, irons out a lot of niggly issues, and that's over and above whether or not there's a need for a meeting, etc. But if you'd ask me what is the solution with poor performance, that communication with a supervisor or a manager with their staff seems to be key, because quite soon that communication reveals problems that need to be undertaken. That communication will reveal issues with recruitment. And then if that communication, that river, as I call it, can be then tapped into, that manager then puts into the river, let's say, to go to the HR department. I'm worried how we recruited this person. Can we make it better next time? We need to support this person with this or that. And the goal is if we've got underperformers to become satisfactory performers, and then satisfactory performers to become good performers. And all the time, that's the movement that's happening, is how do we move everyone from their category, and so that on month-to-month basis, a manager can sit back and say, right, I started off the year where I had 3 underperformers, 4 satisfactory performers, and 5, and now I'm down the line and I've moved everyone up. And in fact, what I'm left with is one person who's an underperformer, that there's nothing can be done. That person was not recruited, that person's not working, and then you have your dismissal. So that's just really a snapshot to give you an idea of where I see value lying in business, especially with the what's going on with Eskom, just with what's going on with the lack of political direction from government, and where we are just as South Africa and as a world, on the tip of some form of recession, if we're not really in it at the moment, is that there's hidden value there, is that that with the resource that we've got, with boosting and putting pressure on managers and supervisors, we can get more out of our staff. Walmart produced a very interesting report some time back, where everyone knew in America, Walmart, the lowest paid salaries that you pay. If you're really desperate for a job, go to Walmart because you'll be guaranteed to get a job, but it's the lowest salary. And what they found is just simply when they did surveys with customers are saying, how come stock is just thrown onto the shelf and it's never square and it's never neatly put on? And when they dug down, because staff weren't engaged, they didn't feel they needed to be productive because they were the lowest paid and they weren't cared for and they weren't spoken to. Once they upped the salary a bit, but they focused on making those employees feel that part of the business, and the supervisors spent time and they got decent supervisor managers, all of a sudden staff took pride in what they were doing. And this is once again this river of information that they used to get to a point that they were getting the best out of business. Often I find in terms of we spend so much time with the negative, with those employees who are negligent, who break the rules and need to be fired, that we often miss out on those who are performing well, and who should be spoken to. And there is something to be said to praise that, to good work and recognize those who are performing. And the final point is that at the end of the day is that you spend most of your time at work. You want to feel you're satisfied. You want to feel challenged, and there's just nothing wrong with looking at workplaces to try and lift the mood and just to make it a pleasant experience with politeness, with a bit of fun, and to really click and have teams with a view to with a view to winning, with a view to getting business, to do its absolute best in a difficult scenario, in a difficult area. Because at the end of the day, those businesses that still provide good quality products, good service, will get repeat business, and they are more successful. So yeah, hopefully that's given you a little bit of a snapshot of an area that's not explored a lot at all. And if you go to the CCMA, you'll very rarely see a poor performance case. You'll see an incapacity case for illness way before you'll see a poor performance case. And it's just an area for me that there's hidden potential there, that we can just boost our businesses, boost our productivity, and ultimately our profitability. So yeah, thank you very much. And that's what I wanted to share. The way I work is I'm going to take questions now if they are. I'm very happy to take them. But also my details are with HR Talk. You're very welcome to drop me a call, drop me a WhatsApp. If you've got any queries or questions that you want to ask me, I'm happy to assist. I'm not one of those lawyers that are just going to charge for anything. I'm happy to give you a bit of guidance on something simple, straightforward. If I have to do something, then I'll obviously quote. But yeah, are there any questions arising just out of this morning's topic?
Hi, Bruce. There's someone here with a question.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Colleen?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you now.
Yes.
Hi, Bruce. One of the questions I have is, where do we stand in terms of getting references with the POPI Act?
All right. So in terms of POPI, you just need employee consent. So at the time that you get job applications, you need a consent in the job application that you may seek reference checks which will mean that you're going to process private and personal information. Provided you've got that, then you can do your reference checks with no problem. If you don't have that consent, then you actually can't do your reference checks. Then it's actually impossible to properly gauge someone for employment. So that's vital.
But some of the companies are using, they say, oh no, sorry, we can't give you a reference because of the POPI Act. And I say, the person has approved, you know, because I always ask people in an interview, would you mind if I contacted any of these people for a reference? And even then they use that as an excuse not to give a reference.
Yeah, so that's certainly that's not lawful. Once you've got the consent and you give it to them and say, look, here's the employee consent, then they're obliged to share it, especially where obviously the employees are seeking a job. Practically where I've had that, I ask the employee to simply contact their previous employer and just make arrangements for you to be able to phone. So I'll get the employee to phone the HR manager to say, look, I've given consent, you've been sent it, please, they want a reference check, will you talk to them? And then that usually smooths it over practically. But yeah, if you can't get a reference check, it's a problem.
It's a big problem, yeah.
And notionally, the employee who's applying with you is going to say, but, you know, I'm telling you, I'm good and, you know, you should hire me. So it puts you in a very awkward situation. But saying that, 9 times out of 10, just speaking nicely to the person. Occasionally, you do come across situations where someone, even with POPI, doesn't want to give a reference check because either there's something negative there, or the person left under a cloud and there's some settlement agreement lurking in the shadows that they don't want to disclose because that is confidential. And then if you're not getting that, then you know there's some other problem.
Okay, super. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Hi,
Right,
Bruce.
yeah,
this is one more question by Chandra.
Okay, yeah, sure. Go for it.
Good day, Bruce. You're speaking to Chandra. I've just got a question. So let's, for instance, say an employee needs to be addressed for, let's say, for performance, but on employment, the duties and responsibilities of this person haven't been clearly outlined. How do you then go about it? Can they then go back and say, but this is not part of my duties, but reasonably because of the position that is held, that they should reasonably be expected to be able to do those duties?
All right, so just thanks, Sandra. I just lost a little bit with the cell phone ringing. Are you saying that you've employed someone, you then ask them to do something and they're saying, no, that's not what I was employed for?
Yeah, it's not in their scope.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so the more senior person, the more it's implied that their duties are everything surrounding a specific job that they do. So for a senior person, you can push that. For a more junior person, I do put under job descriptions that this is your job, but not limited to. But realistically, your job description isn't a term and condition of employment. It's not like your salary or those big issues. You're employed, and those what you're expected to do will change over time as the business has changed. So you know, unless it's a different job, if it's something related, then I would be inclined to push the person to do it. Yeah. If you're getting resistance on that, I always, before I push it though, is try and work out what's going on here. You know, why are they objecting to it? And I ask the question, are you objecting to it because you don't know how to do it? Can I help you to do it? Or what is it? And because usually there's something behind it. It's not just because somebody's lazy or something along those lines. So I would get to the bottom of it, but unless you've got a contract which limits you to simply you get paid to do A, B, and C, it's implied that you're going to do everything in and around it, and I would push them to do it.
Yeah, and I also think with our ever-changing world and more regulation and more things that are coming, let's say, from regulatory bodies, SARS, for instance, those things are ever-changing, and you can't update each job description every time because there's now more things to get done. So I understand what you're also saying. Someone reasonably in a management position should reasonably know what to do and what falls within their scope.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I understand at a low level there might be health and safety. You know, if someone's an operator of a machine where they've got to be trained and then you've got to take them off that machine to do something else, then there might be an argument. But somebody who's a higher up, and things are dynamic and they move very quickly. So we move from manual to automatic systems all the time. If you in some form of administration, and client needs change all the time. You know, they need you to do this. Now they need you to do that. All they need, you know, it's a very dynamic world that we live in. And flexibility is key. And once again, for me, and all of this is learning because it's valuable. You're learning about the person, you're learning about your systems. But one of the things that I do is go back and say, to whoever recruited the person, look, what went wrong here? When we recruited the person, this is what we wanted. Now this person's pushing back. It's just as a secondary learning exercise. It's so important, you know, because the tighter things become, the more efficient the people that we have need to be, and part of that efficiency is being dynamic and being able to do other things.
Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate the insights.
Pleasure. All right. Anybody else? As I say, my details are available from HR Talk, and you're very welcome to contact me separately. I'm always happy to chat because you know what it does. It also gives me insights as to what's going on out there. You know, where I need to tailor my services. And yeah, just the more information of what experiences everyone's having, just I find useful because it just makes me wiser in the sense of learning. Oh, gee, I've never thought of that before. Yeah, so that's why I'm always happy to do it, and if I can help you at the same time, with pleasure. All right. So, if there's no other questions, a big thank you for everyone attending this morning. I hope I've given you a few ideas and thoughts and yeah, it may be a different approach to these aspects. And the one takeaway I would just move back is think in your business, whether you're a business owner, manager, or supervisor, is that I pay for this payroll. Am I getting the most out of it? And if not, why? And I would just let that work through your minds and see, you know, can I get more out of my staff? Can I get a happier staff? Can I get happier customers, better products? And I tell you the answer is yes. Us as humans, we're really resilient. We've got amazing potential and talent. But often we just need to feel comfortable, nurtured, and yeah, and you know, gently pushed to reveal our talent. So yeah. All right. Thank you so much. In the absence of anything else, I just wish you a good Wednesday. And have a good rest of the week. And once again, thank you to HR Talk for facilitating me talking today, and for helping me with the slides. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Super. Have a good day. Bye-bye, everyone.